Back row Minister of the World Permit, Mr. Marketing coming live and direct. Hit you off with some of the things that are going to be taking place with BRM. We got our company kicking off New Thou. New Thou is going to be the name of the company. We're going to start off with a nice t-shirt line, and on the t-shirt line we're going to talk about a lot of topics that we talk about in the videos. And we're going to make some humorous t-shirts, some t-shirts that are very conscious, African-American conscious t-shirts, world consciousness. So we're going to do a lot of things with the t-shirts. So be watching for the line, and I'll post a link when we get the company up and running. It's going to be on Shopify, so be watching for the line when we put it the descriptions out on Shopify, where you can go out and find New Thou, apparel and t-shirts. Saw something today that I wanted to talk about. In sociology, we got something we call acculturation. That's a term that is in sociology terms called acculturation. So acculturation basically means that you lose your culture for another person's culture. So let's say you're an African American, you grew up in a suburb where it's predominantly Caucasian, and you forget everything about African American culture to take on the Caucasian culture of that area. That's called acculturation. You want to be more like them than you want to be like yourself. So here in America, it's a mixing bowl of different cultures. We got African American culture, European American culture. Then we got to break down what your ethnic groups, because every ethnic group have their own form of culture, their own things that which they do. So Chicago has a culture, but inside of Chicago, you can have all these different subcultures. So I saw something today, and it really did bother me. So right now they're trying to sell the Olympics by any means possible. The Olympics just so happen to be in Korea. So they showed this totally looked like make-believe news story with two sisters. One was adopted, she was Korean. The other was natural born to the parents, and she was Caucasian. So they grew up together, yada, yada, yada. They do everything together. And they have some important pieces that people don't catch in news stories like this. So the whole story really was an attack on the Korean culture. So they had the young lady, the adopted one. So I guess the family there they send her to a Korean camp so she can, understand her culture. So in one scene of the story, the Korean girl and the Caucasian girl both go to, I guess they sent the Caucasian girl there to kind of understand the culture of her sister. So they send both of them there, and in the story, the way they have it worded is they have the Korean girl say, well, I didn't like anything about the Korean camp, but my sister, the Caucasian, the European, she loved it. And they do this on purpose. They do this on purpose and use people this way on purpose. So basically you had the Korean girl spitting on her own culture. She didn't like anything about being Korean. She didn't like anything about the Korean camp. She didn't like anything about learning about who she was because in her mind, she's Caucasian, she's European. But the European girl loved learning about the Korean culture. And they do this all the time. They do this all the time. They get a person to say these type of things about their own culture, basically self-hate, as we call it, hating on themselves because they try to create this idea that you don't want to be this, and the best thing in the world to be is a European American. And they do this. They kind of try to downplay people's cultures. But the story gets even dumber. So both of these girls, they're playing hockey throughout high school. The Caucasian girl gets the Korean girl to play hockey. They play hockey together. They're on the same team. So they go to college. They're still playing hockey. And the Caucasian girl is struggling to get on the U.S. women's hockey team. But the Korean girl, the same girl who stated that she didn't like going to Korean camp, mysteriously gets recruited by the Korean hockey team to play on their team, and she goes. At the same time, when her sister finally gets picked up to play for the American hockey team. So here's the issue when we talk about acculturation. Now, if she's been in America all this time, why would she be picked up to go to the Korean hockey team? First of all. Second, she says, well, I don't know why they picked me. I don't speak any Korean. I don't know the language. I don't know the people. But she just said she went to Korean camp. Okay, so you're not making any sense. And this is what we talk about, fake news stories. Now, Trump is part of the fake news, so he can't get up there and call anything fake. But these news stories are basically kind of put together, first of all, to downplay Korean culture. Now, if you've been watching the news, Koreans are dealing with robots. They're into all sorts of technology upgrades nowadays. They're taking some of the endeavors to higher levels. They're really working on, concentrating on robotics over there. So they're doing a whole bunch of Korea. In Korea, South Korea, North Korea still messing around with nukes, trying to power that whole area through nuclear fusion. So they're working on nuclear power for the whole Korean peninsula. So a lot going on in Korea, but to have this young lady downplay her own culture is what America tries to do. They try to belittle anything that's not America. And European Americans especially do this, and African Americans do it too. We try to belittle anything that's not American. And we do this on purpose. And we try to get the people from those areas to do that to their own countries. Try to do it all the time. And this really just shows the arrogance of Americans and the shame of America, that you have to take time to make another country belittle themselves, and the people that come from that area belittling themselves so you can make yourself feel greater. And that's the issue with America, this idea that we're better than everybody and everybody wants to be like us, and that's not the truth. That's not the truth. Yeah, people come to visit New York where I stay at all the time, but at the end of the day, they get back on the plane and go home. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people love their countries. They love who they are. They love their culture. And America tries to get people to forget about their culture and hate their culture. And to have a news story like that, where this Korean girl pretty much spits on her culture, but then she goes plays for the Korean hockey team, it makes no sense. But this is the type of stuff that they put on the news. This is nothing but a story to sell the female hockey team, because who the hell gonna watch it anyway? I'm sorry to say, nobody gonna be watching that crap. And oh, sisters will be playing when they meet. Who really cares? But at the same time, getting the young lady to belittle her own culture, and it's what they love to do. European culture, European American culture, everybody wants to be European. No, they don't. No, they don't. The power brokers of this world come from Africa and Asia. Those are the power brokers of the world. There's always been the power brokers of the world. Anybody on the Asian continent, the African continent. These are the power brokers of the world. So nobody's trying to be European American. Nobody's trying to be European as other Europeans. And it shouldn't be an issue with that. It shouldn't be an issue with that. Everybody has their own culture and should be able to celebrate their own culture. But these stories to belittle people's cultures, belittling who you are at times, taking away from who you are as a person. We all come from a different cultures, different ethnic groups. We should be proud of our ethnic groups. We should learn about our ethnic groups. We should know our history. And we should not belittle our history just because we deem that our history is not good enough to be accepted by other people. Because if they can't accept you, you don't need them around you anyway. Mr. Maki Back Row Ministry, stay true to yourself. Peace.